name is Dr. Samar Fakhro. I'm a clinical psychologist at the Lighthouse, Arabia. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to have you join us today. Our topic is managing anxiety with children, and that's my area of specialty, working with children and with parents. I work with children of all ages, and I always work closely with parents around how they support them at home, how they manage their own feelings when their kids are anxious or angry or experiencing all of their big emotions. And what I do is individual work with families, but I also offer a free support group, which is worth keeping in mind that if you have a child who's in primary age, so between around, let's say 6 to 11, we offer a free support group for parents to come and chat about what's going on. It's called Conscious Parenting. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Lighthouse Arabia is a well-being center here in Dubai, and we see children, adults, people of all ages. We work with corporates, we work with anyone who's got any mental health things going on. We've got more than 30 clinicians around as well. So you can contact us through Instagram, or you can find us on Google. And in this talk, if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask during the live, or when we post it, you can also ask in the comment section, or you can send us a direct message. So today I'll be talking about two main things. What is anxiety? Why do kids have anxiety right now? Why is this such a big topic? And the second part is, what can you do at home to support your kids with their anxiety? So the first part is, what is anxiety? We know that anxiety is really common at the moment. So around 10 to 20% of young people experience mental disorders. We also know that 75% of people with mental health issues will start having mental health issues before the age of 25 or so. So we know that the early years are so important, because that's more often than not where mental health difficulties arise and when they start. And why is this happening so much at the moment? There's many ideas about why that might be. I guess what many people agree on is that what children are going through now is very different from what children used to go through in the past. So children these days, it's very difficult for them to be children, let's say. When we think of what a child does or loves to do, they love to be outdoors, be in nature, be connecting with their friends, playing nonstop, be stimulated in a sensory way, touching things, falling, and that's how they learn, and that's what they love. Unfortunately, right now, things are very different, partly because of screens, which I'm sure every parent has screens on their mind, and rightfully so, because screens are really changing our lives. But we know also that school is getting more difficult, more demanding academically. There's a lot more pressure on kids around, for example, exams, getting homework done. Play has reduced a lot as well, so opportunities to play at break time and to relax, and when they go home, opportunities to just be, let's say, have really gone down. And that's a big concern around what does it mean to be a child, and how can we bring that back into their lives, because we know that kids are struggling because of this. Schools have gotten much more demanding, and for example, extracurriculars, although kids sometimes or often enjoy them, they also are demanding themselves. Sometimes they don't want to do them that day. Sometimes it's after a really long day at school, and they don't get the same opportunities to connect with their family, to be bored, to sit around, to just play some games with family members or siblings. So that's a part of it. We also know that parents are much more stressed, and we know that if a parent is stressed, or anyone in your vicinity is stressed, that will be felt by the people around you. So kids find that their parents are more stressed because the demands on parents are so much higher. The expectations on parents are higher, partly because of social media. We see, for example, the pressure to create the perfect lunchbox. We also know that they're under pressure because people are much more critical now and much more aware about parenting. There's demands like extracurricular activities. So we know that parents are more stressed. We also know that the feeling of living in a safe community, in a neighborhood, knowing that your neighbors are going to look after your kids and have the opportunity to connect, we know that that doesn't happen like it used to. So the sense of community is reduced as well. So these are all contribute to what we're finding is higher levels of anxiety in children. What is anxiety in and of itself? Many of you might have heard of the fight or flight response. We can think of anxiety in a way similar to stress. So a stress response is when, if a dog is chasing us and we think we're going to be bit by a dog, your body will be pumped with adrenaline and cortisol to help you run away, to keep you safe. Your mind will be very focused on getting away from that threat. Anxiety, on the other hand, occurs when there isn't an obvious stressor. So the stress is more an anticipation of what's to come. And the anxiety can be triggered by your thoughts. So you can have a scary thought that then creates the sense of threat again in your body, creating the fight or flight or freeze response. So let's say I think tomorrow I have an exam. That creates this full body reaction of fight or flight, which can lead to shortness of breath. It can lead to racing thoughts. And if you think about it, your body thinks that there's a genuine threat, like you're being chased by a dog and you might get hurt, or you might, be killed by whatever it is that the threat is. And what's difficult about anxiety is that it's difficult to let go of the stress because they exist, whether that's exams or it's pressure in school with friendships, difficulties with friends, bullying. We can't just get rid of the stressor itself. We need to learn to manage the feelings and the body reaction that comes up from the anxiety in order to reduce the symptoms that come up. So some of the common symptoms of anxiety are, we can break them down into physical symptoms, like a physical reaction in your body, emotional reaction, a behavioral response, and thoughts or cognitions. So this is important to think about with what your child is going through when they portray a behavior that you find difficult. So some parents might say, my child is really lazy. Even when I'm shouting at them or telling them to do their homework, they just ignore me. Very often that's actually what we call a freeze response, because kids can feel so overwhelmed by what's to come or what they need to do. They disconnect, they shut down. So that's an example of a behavior that might occur. The physical experience will be shortness of breath, racing heart, trembling. You can have pins and needles in your hand, sweating. And I'm sure many of you and I even can relate to these feelings, because all of us do experience anxiety, and that's really normal. So let me just encourage you again. You are very welcome to ask questions in the chat while I continue to talk about what anxiety is and how to manage it. So just to continue a little bit around what is anxiety in our bodies. We get those physical reactions that I described. We get an emotional reaction. So we're much more likely to feel worried, let's say. That might be an obvious one. We're also much more likely to be angry. And many times kids come to see us at the clinic because they say they have anger issues. But beneath that, you can see that they feel stressed and overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed and wound up and pent up, what we call our fuse or our tether is much shorter because we feel like we can't cope with what's being expected of us or what we're doing. So anger is a really common feeling. Sadness is really common, you know, feeling hopeless about what's to come and how you're doing at school. These feelings are all really common. So anxiety is not necessarily just the feeling of worry. We get lots of other feelings alongside. What you might notice in your child's behavior is snappiness, feeling really angry. Tantrums are really common if a child is anxious. Refusal to do things, refusal to, for example, do their homework or follow rules or instructions, or to have meltdowns when you ask them to do something like brush their teeth. More screen time. So many kids and adults avoid their anxiety by procrastinating. And when you procrastinate, often you turn to a device that, you know, takes your mind off things. So you might notice your kids wanting to spend much more time on their screens when they're feeling anxious. And the reason all of this is really relevant right now is because we're thinking about what's the past week or so been like with kids being back to school. Back to school time is a time of major transition, and if you have any susceptibility to anxiety, which most people do because anxiety is natural, we know that transitions and unpredictability, doing something new, are all triggers for anxiety. So many kids will be feeling anxiety right now, although maybe the initial anticipation has subsided. We also know that they are still adjusting, and it does take 4 to 6 weeks to adjust to being in a new class and in a new environment. What are some techniques that a child can practice in the middle of an anxiety attack? Okay, this is a really helpful question. Thank you for asking. So I have a few things that I will say about managing anxiety on the whole. And I have 4 ideas around how to manage anxiety overall. And part of those ideas is in the moment, how do we respond to it? Like I said, anxiety is an ongoing thing, and it can eat into different parts of your life. One day it's anxiety about school, the next day it's anxiety about a friend, the next day it's anxiety about an illness, and it can catch on to different things. So we have to think about managing anxiety on the whole. And then within that, we think about, in that specific moment, how do we respond in order to calm the nervous system back down. So with children, the first and most important thing I'd encourage every parent to do and teacher to consider is increasing opportunities for play. Play is so important. Anxiety gets us in our heads. Like I said, our thoughts are what trigger the anxiety. Play gets us in the moment. It calms down our nervous system. It gives us an opportunity to connect with people, to enjoy life again. It switches off our brain. So play is so important. And I think oftentimes, because of the pressure that we have in society right now, we feel that play can be a waste of time, that the kid isn't learning, they should be doing something, they should be memorizing things, there's pressure. But play is what's really at the core of a child's development and their ability to switch off those thoughts when they're racing. So like I said, at home, one idea is to encourage playtime rather than going from one task to the next, or having an extracurricular activity every day. Creating opportunities for free play, and that's really important. The second thing is connection. So we often feel anxious when we feel less connected to people. Children feeling less connected to their parents. We know that attachment is at the center of feeling secure emotionally. So having a secure connection with your parents and siblings makes it much more possible to feel at ease the rest of the day. And how do we connect with our kids? Again, opportunities for play. It can be 10 minutes, and I know parents are extremely busy. As I said earlier, it's an exceptionally hard time for parents. So it's important to be kind to yourself and remember that 10 minutes is better than nothing. 5 minutes is better than nothing. Just an opportunity to be one-on-one with your child for those 10 minutes in the evening with no tasks, no devices, just them choosing what activity it is and you being with them. Again, attachment and security are at the center of being able to manage your emotions for the rest of the day. The third one I would encourage, again for parents, is tuning into how you're feeling. Knowing when are the evenings where your cup is empty. You know, you've had an exceptionally stressful day. Is there someone you can call on in order to help you? Or is it that you do need to take a break and you let your child know, you know, I need 5 minutes to myself? Because when we're trying to give from an empty cup, we end up overstressing, burning out, and kids pick up on that very easily. And it's better for you to have the opportunity to take that break if it needed. And then when you're back, you can give that undivided attention and that opportunity to connect again. And this, again, is so important at the beginning of the school year because so many things are new and stressful and worrying to kids. And in these times is when we need to up those opportunities for connection and attachment. So step 1, increase play. Step 2, increase connection time, undivided attention, whether that's 5-10 minutes in the evening. Step 3, parents, tune into yourself. Consider getting extra support from friends, family, you know, coming to our free support group at the Lighthouse, whatever it is needed for you to fill your cup a little bit for that time to connect. And step 4, let's think about activities. So coming back to the question that was asked earlier, thank you for that. In the moment when a child is stressed, what's happening is our system is in fight or flight and we're hyperventilating. So our heart is racing, our mind is racing. Oftentimes we actually think that we are going to die. That's a symptom of panic. A symptom of panic is we misinterpret our heart racing and symptoms to think we might die. And those thoughts then increase the feelings in the body because we think there is a genuine threat of death. So how do we get out of that? The one very helpful and important tip to practice is breathing. So when we're breathing, we are letting go of that hyperventilating, which is signaling to our body that something's wrong. So you notice your breath gets really short, like, and then what you do is you slow it down. So I do this with kids. It's really helpful and it's great because you have your hand everywhere you go. You start at the bottom of your thumb, and as you follow it up, you take a deep breath in. And then as you follow it down, you take a deep breath out. And then you go to your index finger, deep breath in. And the next one, deep breath out. So you do 5 deep breaths by following your fingers. And it's great because your hand is everywhere you go and it's very visual. So you, again, all your thoughts are going to just the breathing. Another thing that's helpful is to try and extend your out breath, the exhalation, more than the inhalation, because again, that calms down the parasympathetic nervous system, or it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what calms our body back down. Another thing in those feelings of panic is some sort of sensory stimulation, again, to get you back in your body and out of your head. So dipping your hand into an ice bucket, taking a cold shower, using maybe a rubber band on your wrist so you can feel the sensation of something on your body. That just is, in that moment, takes away from those feelings of panic into feeling calm. However, all of these strategies are very important to practice outside of the moment. So we can't really learn when we're stressed. We have to learn outside of that moment and practice and practice and practice, and then see the results during the following, let's say, stress episode. So some things to practice regularly as a family. The first one is, for example, externalizing is a good one. Kids find it overwhelming to have worries just in their mind as an abstract idea. So we can externalize it and talk about it as an object. So you might say, okay, this is your stress. You know, when is the stress full? When is the stress empty? When does it feel hard? When does it feel soft? So that's one example, or you could make up an object yourself, like what color is your stress, or what shape is it? What texture is it? Because then when we see it on the outside, we are less overwhelmed by it on the inside. You can practice changing thoughts from what if to what is. So work with your child. If they're talking about what if tomorrow this happens, what if that, let you try to focus them on what is, what are we doing right now. I think we have a question here, but I'll just continue while we have a look at what came up. An important thing to say to your child who's worried is to make sure that you're not shutting down the conversation. A very easy way to do this is just to say, tell me more. Sometimes when we just try and distract immediately, that actually shuts down the opportunity to talk and open things up. So if they've said anything about their day that they seem worried about, rather than problem solving or distracting, you can just say, tell me more, and give them the opportunity to open up more about what it was, what they felt it meant, and what's to come. Okay, I see a question here saying, my 28-month-old daughter, I've noticed that her behavior changed. She's very angry and hurts other kids. Is that normal? I'm so worried that she can't have friends. So thank you for sharing that question and for being open about it. It's really important to remember that anger is a normal feeling. It's 100% normal. It's healthy. It's a good response. And it's important to remind yourself of that so that you're not feeling so overwhelmed when it happens. It's okay to feel angry. The other reason to know it's normal is so that we're not shaming children about feeling angry. And I see this often, and I do this myself accidentally because, you know, I'm human and we're all human. Even when we know things, we do things that we're not particularly proud of, but we get scared and overwhelmed by anger, so we try and stop it immediately. So one thing to do is to name it in order to tame it. So for example, saying, oh wow, it seems like you're feeling quite angry. So they've hurt someone. It seems like you're feeling quite angry. Why don't I help you regulate your feelings, or help you get to a better state so that you can go back to playing? We aren't focusing on punishment or shaming those feelings, particularly with younger children, because they actually don't have control over their feelings. They're still in the very early stages of learning to regulate their feelings. So to answer part of your question, it's 100% normal for kids that age to be experiencing anger, and that also it will often come out to other people or to other kids. It's worth exploring within yourself. Has there been any changes? Are they possibly feeling envious of other kids? Is there a sibling? There's a lot to think about within yourself, within your current situation, to consider why is it coming out specifically with other kids. Now, with a 28-month-old, a really good idea is to do some storytelling and role play. So you can do it with toys, where you create a scenario and you say, you know, your child's name as one toy, and then another child, and you create a scenario where they've been angry before, and you talk about what feelings your daughter might have been feeling, and then you talk about what was going on for the other child, and then how could she have done something differently? Could she have stepped away and talked to her mom, or talked to whichever adult was around, or could she have, you know, when she was upset by that person, could she have gone to play with another child? So through these opportunities of play and role modeling, you're taking away the stigma and the shame of those feelings, and you're teaching a new skill. When you're at home, when other kids aren't around, if you're seeing her get angry, it's good to talk about, to name it, to give her some strategies around calming down. For example, deep breaths. And that will help her in those moments that are more stressful. So let me have a look if we have any other questions. I hope that answers your question. So we also have some other activities that you can do with your child, especially if they're 6 or so, 6 plus. You can create what we call a calm box. Have a box in their room. You can use a shoe box and choose things that they know they like and help them calm down. So it might be, a book they like to read, or a coloring book, or a squishy toy, or a stress ball. All these things that they turn to, or like a little lovey toy. All these things they turn to when they're feeling stressed, so that they have the safe box. They might have a journal in there if they're someone who's at an age where they like journaling. But it's just, it gives them ownership and understanding over what they do when they're having these overwhelming feelings of worry. Another activity might be creating a shield, so cutting out a paper into the shape of a shield. And on it, writing the strategies that they know work for them. So the shield represents, how do I protect myself from these feelings when they come up, because it's normal for them to come up, but how do I protect myself and cope with them? So they might put breathing on there, they might put distraction, they might put coloring, for example. They could put their stress ball, whatever strategies work for them, or playing. Again, playing is a really important one. And coming back to the body connection. The body is where we need to be residing. Because of our current world, we are in our minds. Because of our, devices and stressors coming up, homework, all this stuff, we get stuck in our minds, and we are always wanting to come back to our body. So practicing things like exercise, making it fun at home, either yoga or something more fun than yoga for the child, just stretching or doing silly things like jumping jacks, or just letting them know they can make up an activity, kind of like Simon Says, where they do an activity and you copy them, and then vice versa. Just these opportunities to be in their body rather than in their minds and always trying to problem solve. Deep breaths, you can find on Google very easily, progressive muscle relaxation, child-friendly ones, and again, those sensory moments, playing in a sand pit, using an ice bucket, just really being present in those sensory stimuli. So these are the main things. Of course, we are a mental health clinic, so if you have any concerns about your child's anxiety being, let's say, above the norm, and the way we would measure that is if we feel like their anxiety is getting in the way of their everyday life. So if their anxiety, for example, is stopping them from doing their homework, stopping them from going to birthday parties, it's making them really worried about forming friendships, if they're really anxious about leaving their parents to go to school, if the worries are so much so that they're getting in the way of them being a child and enjoying their life, then I would really encourage seeking a consultation from a professional. You can always start with your pediatrician. Maybe they'll recommend a specific type of professional, but if you're looking for an occupational therapist, a psychologist, psychiatry, we are available at the Lighthouse. Like I said, we have the conscious parenting support group, which is free. We also have a support group for parents of children with autism, which happens every month as well. And we have a single parent support group where parents talk often more specifically about the struggles of being a single parent, but generally also bring parenting dilemmas. So those areas are a good way to connect with a professional. They're all run by psychologists. Everyone, it's been lovely to have you, and thank you for your questions. And if you have any more, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you.